And good morning. It is Tuesday morning, so you know what that means? That's right. It's another edition of the Kitchings Table. Good morning. I'm Earl Kitchings, your host. Joining me, Ronline Cannady. Good morning, Ronline.
Good morning.
And we are here to bring you another juicy, fun-filled, informational packed show to give you something that you probably didn't know or you need to know. One of the two. It fits in there somewhere. And because we are still dealing with Women's History Month on Awesome Radio, WBISLP 106.9 FM. We are wanting to bring you more of those women who you may have heard about or you need to know about because some of them are phenomenal women who have done some phenomenal things. And some of them are in our presence even as we speak today. Some of these women are on the scene doing some remarkable things, and their career paths have launched them way out into the professional realm. So we're here to bring you that today on WBISLP. And Ron Lean, you sent me all this information, and man, it's like a dozen people almost that you researched, women specifically, that you have some little snippets that we can go over and talk about today. And I believe we're talking about science and engineering, or just all science, something to do with these area of science today, because those particular careers are so dramatically important to the vitality of what happens in our lives every day. Because when we look at the things that people in engineering or science, specifically chemistry, physics, IT, it affects our lives on a day to day basis. And I was speaking to a gentleman yesterday, and he was talking to me about the fact that he works for the local transportation company here. And he was saying that some of the new vehicles that they were going to put out on the road very soon are 3D made vehicles.
Mm.
And that almost shocked me, but the reason why it didn't shock me was because the other day they launched a rocket into space that was made from a 3D computer printer. And I couldn't wrap my head around it because I'm like, how is that done? But when he showed me how large the printers are that makes the uh, materials and makes the parts and makes everything, and then he told me that the material that they make these 3D products out of is stronger than steel.
Mm.
Stronger than steel. I mean, I'm like, think about that. Here's a product that is basically man-made, that is made with all these carbon elements and filaments and things like that, and it has such a strength that it's stronger than steel. So that's why they can send a rocket up into outer space that was 3D made, because the components that comprise all of this, just unbelievable. So that's kind of what we're talking about today. These women who have impacted this area called science and engineering. What you got for us?
All right. So we're talking about STEM today: science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And let
Okay.
me tell you, it reminded me when you were talking about the rockets and the everything that comprises of getting a 3D model, uh, that design made me think about when you and I were talking about the documentary that you want to put together dealing with the high school that your father taught at, Gilbert. And when you said the person that you were speaking with was, going to film a lot of that dealing with drones. And that just opened my mind to a whole new world, even in the movie industry. Even our news team now are sending drones to the location to let us know what's going on with traffic and other things that are happening in our world. So, in researching these ladies, that I've sent over to you, I realized that this didn't just get started. This has been happening throughout history. And as I heard someone say, just turn the women loose and just let them go. Let them use their knowledge for impacting the world, because without the women, where will we be anyway, right? So,
Well, I know without a few women, the space program might still be on the launch pad because when we look at that movie, Hidden Figures,
figures, yes.
and the lady that was doing all the computing of the equations, she figured out how to launch John Glenn into space and how to get him back at a precise point so that the Navy could pick him up. Uh, you had all these other engineers in that room, and maybe not all of them were asked to look into that one particular thing. But in the movie, when she's coming up with the calculations, and then when she went back to a very, very, very old school math method to configure it, it's one thing about math that will be true today and for years to come as it was yesterday and years before. Numbers don't lie.
No, they do not lie at all. Two plus two is always going to be four. you
Rem-
know,
Remind, remind me to tell you a joke about that, and I'll prove you wrong.
oh, the two plus two rule was proven wrong. Is that what you're going to tell me? So anyway, before we go there, I would like to acknowledge Ruth E. Carter. It says New York Times posted that Ruth E. Carter, now this is Kayla Richardson's story, by the way. Ruth E. Carter becomes first Black woman to win two Oscars. The costume
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Miss Carter was the winner of two Oscars at Sunday nights.
for the
Yeah.
original Black Panther in 2019. It says Ruthie Carter, tasked with crafting the Afro Truist costumes in Black Panther Wakanda Forever, took home her second Oscar on Sunday night for costume design. Carter, who also won a statue for the 2018 film Black Panther, is not only the first Black woman to win two Academy Awards, but she also the first person to win for both the original and the sequel of a movie. So tell me about that. What are your thoughts about that? I know you heard about it before I did. I just learned about it this morning.
Yet I had heard about Miss Carter winning the Oscar for Black Panther, the first Black Panther movie, on NPR, where one of their shows interviewed her. Miss Carter is a graduate of Howard University, and we don't think about it because we watch movies and it's a second thought, third or fourth thought about the attire that the actors and actresses wear in movies. Now, it's not until you see a movie like Wakanda Forever or Star Wars or something along that nature where you have uh, an extreme amount of maybe the same costume or some unique costume and things like that, where you focus in on that. But when you look at what it takes, what it takes to make costumes, when you're talking about designing these costumes, and some of them are repetitive, some of them are uniquely designed for one. So when you look at every time there's a scene change and there's a costume change, well, all these costumes have to be made. And you're talking about employing, I don't know how many individuals to help make costumes, but you have to find the fabrics. You have to find the other amenities that may go with them. I know in the first Black Panther, some of the costumes had the use of animal fur. You gotta, either synthetically may have that made. So when they're making a movie and they're looking at the costumes first you have to have a visionary costume designer who has the ability to make all this all these costumes and have people to make all of these things. So you look at what she did and how she did it and all that went into it. That's a lot of work. That's a lot of responsibility. That's a lot of, hey, we got to have it by certain days because in a movie there are always timelines, and you got to hit those timelines. And when can you imagine if you got to shoot a scene and the costumes aren't ready? That
Not,
delays everything and
yes, not only
delays.
that, not to cut you off, but not only that, if there's a hiccup on the set while someone is wearing that costume, it has to
Exactly.
quickly repair.
Exactly. So for her to win best costume at the Oscars for the second time for the same basically movie is remarkable. And it just goes to show that if given opportunity and resources, if given opportunity and resources, we can excel and we'll continue to excel. And that's been the issue for so many years. And it makes me think about one of the songs that James Brown made when he was in his heyday.
Mhm.
And the song was, I don't want you to give me nothing. Just open up the door. I get it myself. And
Yes.
basically, what that meant was, I don't need you to give me anything but an opportunity. If you give me the opportunity and the resources, because the resources must be there. You can give me the opportunity, but I don't have the monetary resources, other resources, labor, people to do the work. I can't get there. But you give me the opportunity, I'll make it happen.
Mhm.
So she's made it happen. Uh, so now when she is asked to design things or make costumes, the beautiful part about it is, well, once upon a time I was only charging this amount, but now with those two ghost figurines standing behind me, well, it costs me a little bit more to do things now. And of course, your name, credibility, all of that, because that's what now happens. Her credibility is way, way, way beyond probably what she thought about when she did her first, not even first movie costume, but when she was doing the first costumes for a play or whatever. She's gone way beyond that. But the important thing now is, Miss Carter, who are you teaching to do what you do in the event you can't do it anymore? And that's
Mhm.
that's where our legacies have to be really be founded on. We have to continue to give back to young people and individuals who are coming up who are inspired, who have the passion to want to do these things. And I'm excited that she has achieved this, and looking forward to her doing more work, but her passing the baton to someone else who can do the same work, so that we can have just, we get into these onesies. Well, we got one that does this and one that does that. And we got to get to multiples. We got to get to more than just ones. We got to get to the threes, fours, and fives.
Yes, and I say this was so on time because of what we're talking about today, dealing with STEM, with science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, because the movies that we're talking about, it fits right into all of that, into the science
Mm-hmm.
fiction,
Mm-hmm.
through the technology that is used to make these things happen, and then to design a costume that is just so on point, believable. Angela Bassett, she wore her costumes well. I have to give it to her. All of those ladies, all of those men did. They brought that movie to life with those costumes. So my hat goes off to her. Thank you so much for the things that you've added to that. All right. So next up, Marion Croak. I was back to the technology again. I was looking, the things that I was looking at, we were talking about the hidden figures, which we're going to talk about in a moment. But Marion Rogers Croak, Vice President of Engineering at Google.
Hmm. She's a what?
She is Vice President
A
of
vice president.
Engineering. Yes, of
Vice president.
Engineering.
Vice
Vice
president of
President,
engineering.
yes, at
Okay.
Google.
At Google. So she has people under her. She doesn't do the work like she once did. She has people under her now.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And she was previously the senior vice president of research and development at AT&T. And right now, she holds more than 200 patents. She was inducted into the Women's Technology International Hall of Fame in 2013. And in 2022, she was inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame for her patent regarding voice over internet protocol technology, or VoIP. She is one of the first two Black women to receive that honor, along with Patricia Bath. Her invention allows users to make call over the internet of a phone instead of a phone line. And today we can target that. We can congratulate her for Zoom,
Mm, mm, mm,
Skype,
mm, mm, mm.
and now I love Teams, Microsoft Teams, to be able
Oh,
to hold those meetings,
yes.
you
A
know,
black
and
woman, a black woman has done all of that.
has done that.
Hmm.
Done, has brought the military community to home,
Right,
so that they can
right,
see their families, brought
right,
back the life.
right, right,
No more
right,
writing
right, right.
letters and waiting to hear, oh, did I have a boy or did I have a girl? What do they look like? None of that.
Yeah.
And when I think about FaceTime, when I think about Facebook, Facebook Live, you can see what your person is doing. They can call you over the internet. Oh, that's powerful.
Now, Ron Lee, let me just add one other thing to this miraculous invention that she has come up with and invented. Now, there's a part B to this because okay, you created this technology right there in front of us. However, a lot of that is not possible if there are no satellites in space to transmit these waves of information and things of that nature. So it's like, okay, so I'm on my computer. We don't even think about it. We just know to use it. It's like, but how can I see Ron Lean and see somebody else somewhere else and somebody else somewhere else on my computer screen and there's no line to access it to connect it to anything is wireless? How does all that happen? I mean, it's almost like magic. It's like, okay, press a button, boom, there you are. It's like, but these microwaves, transmit signals, go all the way to outer space and back down in milliseconds. We can't even see how fast it's moving, but that's the other part that we don't know to talk about or think about because we just press buttons and boom, there it is. So to know that a Marion Croak is on the front line, has been on the front line of doing these type of things, is just
Right. And
makes you prideful.
what better way to learn that technology than through AT&T? Fiber optics. They made things so easy. I remember
Oh,
what were those old telephones that
copper
first
lines.
that you had to, that was that FaceTime back in the day, back
Mm,
in the 90s.
mm,
Everyone couldn't afford one, you
mm-hmm.
know.
Right.
So it just looked like that wasn't coming to life. And now we're able to work from home, you know.
It's interesting that you brought up fiber optics because out of college, I started working for Bell Laboratories. Now,
Mm,
Bell Laboratories is the research and development arm of AT&T.
mm-hmm.
So anything that was new, they thought about doing, had any ideas about doing all of these things. This is where it starts with research and development. And the site that I was blessed to work at because my Bell primarily and Bell Laboratories primarily had many locations in the New Jersey area. They had probably about 5 locations in the New Jersey area. Everybody's kind of doing something different, but they're all working toward the same goal and the same end. But in the Atlanta Bell Labs office, I do know that engineers, when I was working there in the late 70s and early 80s, were working to develop and refine fiber optics. That's the first time I ever saw fiber optics. I don't know when you ever saw fiber optics, Ronline, to see a strand of glass that you can send light through it that carries information. But that's when I saw it in the late 70s. And to see them perfect that. So you talked about the old phone lines where the lines were made of copper. Copper conducts electricity very well. And you may have had a 3-4 inch diameter cable line. I mean, because it was like a cable that was this large, but it had all these copper lines in it. You take something that big and you take it and it gets to be about maybe an inch in diameter.
Mm-hmm.
And it's got 3 times as many lines that copper cable had, transmitting all of this information through this glass like this at the speed of light. Um, you just don't realize what a game changer fiber optics has been in the quality of life since 1980.
And you're absolutely right. I remember working for a division of AT&T in the telemarketing division, and we used to, every Friday they would show us films, with the latest technology that they were developing and working on.
Mm-hmm.
And when I saw the fiber optics showing it as thin as a strand of hair,
Yep.
you know, that were able to do so many amazing things as far as in communications and connecting us together. That was just and to run a whole call center, just based on fiber optics, you know.
And Ronnie, do you remember that if you didn't pay your phone bill on time, the service person would come to your home or your office and go to that box and turn your phone off manually until you submitted that payment, right?
Right,
So what fiber optics allowed them to do was they don't have to send anybody out anymore.
right.
Everything is in a mainframe station in a big building, and all they have to do is push a button and your stuff is off.
That's correct.
That's all they had to do. I don't have to go out and do that anymore. I don't have to put a worker at risk anymore.
Mm-hmm.
All I have to do is press that button. And just like I pressed it to turn you off, you call up and say, "Well, I paid the bill," and they credit it just like that. They press that button again, and you're right back on in a matter of seconds.
Yes, that's
So
the same for our utility company. When all of that ended, it was like no more technicians coming out to turn you off
no,
the service off. Due to fiber optics now, we could just press the button and then we'll know if you made a credit or got
oh
that
yeah,
credit books.
yeah, because we can turn it on and off as we choose to. You didn't okay? We
Right.
flipped it on, flipped it off, flipped it
Yeah.
on, flipped it off, and,
Yeah.
and that was that's the beauty of it. But again, the fact that those engineers, and I know we did have some uh, black engineers. As a matter of fact, my roommate at the time had graduated from Southern University, had gone on to get his master's from Georgia Tech. Now, you may not believe this, right? You may not believe this. I know, and he was a brilliant guy. He was a very intelligent guy. This guy built a computer, not what we kind of use, but a computer that does things. He built one of those while we were staying together, and I'm just looking at him like, what in the world? This guy, So to know that you had engineers when he got his degree, when he got his master's from Georgia Tech. And I mean, you're talking about a high end degree when you get a master's from Georgia Tech. And so I lost track of him after college. I mean, after we stayed together, and he got married and had a family. I lost track of him. And then one day I was looking up something and I typed in his name and it popped up. And he had become the vice president of because Marbell had spun out a new company at the time. It had another name, but it was still connected. He had become the vice president of one of their offices over in Saudi Arabia, the Middle East somewhere. And my mouth just dropped open. I'm like, I wasn't surprised that he had accomplished that, but just the fact that, dude, you're the vice president of one of their entities overseas somewhere, which tells me you've raised your game a lot since we were, rooming together when we were working for Bell Laboratories back in the '80s and late '70s. But yeah, he was a brilliant guy, and just unbelievably smart. And his father was I believe a chemistry teacher at Southern University when he was in high school and college. So the brain power was already in him.
Mm-hmm.
Those brain cells to make you extra smart. They they were already in him, and he just unleashed them on the world. And it was just unbelievable. I'm like, this guy built a computer.
in the room, right? In the room.
Ronline, I'm talking about we're talking about the late '70s, early '80s. Now I'm not talking about the computers you see now. These laptops. No, I'm talking about an early version. This guy had built one, and he gave it commands, and it did things. Like I said, you said computer, and you think what you work on. No, not that level of computer, but here's a piece of equipment that when you give it the commands, it does what you ask it to do. And
Yeah.
I'm like, who does this? But that's how brilliant he was.
Yes. Congratulations that you get to know such of a person, and hopefully we'll be talking about him in the near future. All right. So moving on. Before we do, let's go to tell people who where we broadcasting out of, Earl.
Well, it is a Tuesday. This is the Kitchings Table on WBISLP 106.9 FM. Follow us on YouTube, Facebook Live, Roku, and GPAC 23 if you want to just catch one of the episodes of our shows that we come to you every week on a Tuesday morning starting at 10 o'clock. But WBISLP, man, this is, as they say, the little engine that could. Well, it's the little engine now, but one day you're just going to see it hit that button and then boom, it's
Yes.
going to be a conglomerate. I've told the owner that I had a vision that she is just in the very early stages of being the next media mogul. And I see that happening for her. And the only thing stopping her from doing that is her.
No, let's not do that. Let's not do that. The only thing that's stopping her is what you said last week. We have to get that money in. With the resources is what she needs. You give her the resources, a couple of $1 million, and she is going forward.
Well, it's coming because media entities are becoming very prized commodities for passing along information,
Mhm.
whether it be on the radio, whether it be on television, whether it be on your computer. But you have to become a licensed entity in order to utilize these means of communications. So having that license and building from this point at this level, and all you do is layer on top of that. And eventually, as you layer, all of a sudden, you start seeing investors come in, and investors see the value. And like I said, the next thing you know, boom, there it is, and it's like, wow. So yeah, it's gonna happen.
All right, all right, all right. So our next up are two pioneering African American women physicians who overcame significant obstacles to earn their medical degrees and provide health care to underserved communities. And that's no other than Rebecca Lee Crumpler and Susan McKinney Stewart. And I just, my hat goes off to them because they were the physicians back in the 1800s when our country was in an uproar about women participating in anything that was going to economically impact them financially with their, for better living with their families, and to be able to go out into the communities door to door, no doubt, to be able to make house calls, to be able to save people lives. So I just wanted to recognize them. And from there, they made the way for people like Marie Maynard Daly. Was an African American biochemist who made important discoveries in the field of protein synthesis, including identifying the role of nucleic acids for in the process. She earned her PhD in chemistry in the United States. She conducted research on metabolism of nucleic acids and discovered that sugar in the bloodstream can lead to arterial disease.
Okay.
Her research was highly respected in the field of biochemistry. She made significant contributions to understanding the metabolism of sugars, the role of nucleic acids in protein synthesis, and functioning of living cells. Her work helped to advance the field of biochemistry and has had an important implications for medical research and healthcare. In recognition of her groundbreaking research, Dr. Daly was awarded numerous honors and awards during her lifetime, including the election of the National Academy of Sciences, the highest scientific honor in the United States. Her research also published in some of the most prestigious scientific journals, and her contributions to the field of biochemistry have been cited by many other scientists in their own research. Overall, her research was highly respected by her peers and in scientific community, and has had a lasting impact on the field of biochemistry. And so when I think about her with um, her discovery of how sugar in your bloodstream can affect your heart, can cause all kind of malfunctions or dysfunctions into your bodies, and how did they get there, how does it happen, to wherein we now have awareness of the better foods to eat, why it's important to eat more fruits and vegetables, and what time of the day to eat those things, and also the importance of water, of how water impacts your bloodstream. So my hat is off to her today.
Okay. Who you got next?
All right, I have Alma Levette Hayden. She was an African American chemist who made important contributions to the field of spectrometry and chromatometry,
That's a mouthful.
and worked at the National Institute of Health, NIH, for over 25 years. As a matter of fact, she was one of the first African American women to work there. Uh, she was a she conducted research on synthesis of organic compounds, including steroids, during her career at the National Institute of Health. Her research contributed to the development of oral contraceptives. Now, she was a key player in the cancer research and albinism, the discoloring of your skin, of why we don't have, why some people are
Pigmentation. Yeah.
without pigment in their skin,
Mm-hmm.
easily being burned and things like that, and how to be able to overcome that. So my hat go off to her today. Now, the hidden figures. Katherine Johnson, she was a mathematician who calculated the trajectories launch windows, and emergency return paths for numerous NASA missions, including the first human space flight by an American, Alan Shepard's Freedom 7 mission. She was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2015. Mary Jackson, she was NASA's first African American female engineer. She worked on the wind tunnel experiments and helped to develop mathematics behind NASA's supersonic flight program. And then we have Dorothy Vaughan. She was a mathematician and computer programmer who worked at the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics, NACA, which later became NASA. She became the first African American supervisor at NACA and led a team of female African American mathematicians known as West Computers. And then we have Christine Darden. She was an aerospace engineer and mathematician who worked on supersonic flight and sonic boom research. She authored over 50 papers on aeronautics, African American women in STEM.
Well, going back to the ladies that they made the movie about, first, uh, Katherine Johnson. Katherine Johnson came out of that group of women known as West Computers. And I guess she was the sharpest pencil of all those ladies because she was the lady that they sent over to the projects dealing with America's first flights into outer space with using men, man flights as they called them, and her calculations. And she was definitely a game changer from the standpoint of, again, standing up for what she believed in. They could not deny her intelligence. They could not deny the fact that the things she could do, the calculations she came up with. And as you were reading about Miss Darden and said she authored over 50 papers, in the movie, Miss Johnson was never allowed to put her name on the paper she had to type up, even though she had done most of the work. And I believe one of the most impactful scenes to me was she fought hard to be able to get in the room to make the presentation amongst all these men who were making the decisions about the next flight in outer space. The armed forces had something to do with it, and everyone else. And when the question was asked of her about getting John Glenn back, the guy who they were looking at, who they thought had all the answers, thought was the most intelligent guy, he started doing and the supervisor said, Catherine, you want to give it a go? And that's when she went to that blackboard and wrote that calculation out, and everybody looked and was stunned. I know all those guys were stunned. I know all those men were just stunned and in awe that she came up with all that. But John Glenn, as he was portrayed, was like, that looks good to him. And the way they portrayed it was he was not going into outer space, even though the computer, the IBM computer, was there to make all the calculations faster than men and women could do at that time. He said he was not going unless Katherine Johnson gave him the go sign with her calculations, because he didn't trust that doggone computer. So since Miss Johnson had earned his trust, had shown him in that room that day that she was intelligent enough to calculate, and it was exactly right. It's like, hey, if she says it's correct, I'm up and out. But if not, I'm not going anywhere, because see, once you get out there,
you got to know what you're doing in order to get back home.
To come back in, because they show you, man, you're just circling the earth at a very high rate of speed, 1,000+ miles an hour. And now you're trying to drop back into a little hole. You're trying to get back into that hole traveling that fast. And if you miss the hole, like they said, well, you could get ricochet and you just go on out into space, and as the old TV show would say, you're just lost in space.
Yes, you're lost in space or you're disintegrated in space trying to get
Exactly.
back. So
So
yes,
those three women, Mary Jackson, who was an engineer, phenomenal, and then Miss Vaughn, who her role in everything was played so dramatically and impactfully that it showed who she was, what her beliefs were, what she stood on. And those three women, here it is 50 years later that we find out that three black women were instrumental in the early phases of the NASA manned space program. So it's remarkable to hear about them and to see what they did. And then you have a Christine Darden to come along as a aerospace engineer. And when you're dealing with these numbers at that level, you are highly, highly, highly intelligent.
yes, 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 yes. And my hat goes off to her. She was out of North Carolina. So I want to make sure that everybody knows that North Carolina had Christine Darden to represent them, and she represented them well. She has a lot of achievements. The one I'm looking at, she had also been inducted into the Women in Science Engineering Lifetime Achievement Award. She has been inducted into the Virginia Aviation Hall of Fame and the International Women in Aviation Pioneer Hall of Fame. Darden's contributions to aerospace engineering and her advocacy for women of and people of color in STEM fields have helped to break down barriers and pave the way for future generations of scientists and engineers. And to your point of what's happening today, we have more space launches that are happening now than ever before in history, thanks to Elon Musk and the other person they seem to be competing with one another, and I'm liking that competition with the two of them. It's
While
opening up so many doors.
while the space technology is a necessity specifically for communication and other entities, my only true concern about them sending up rockets as frequently as they do is that it deteriorates the atmosphere and the ozone level that protects our planet. And if I may paint an example or give you an analogy of how this space thing works. So imagine being in your home and all the windows in your home are closed and there's a lot of wind and things swirling around outside. But as long as you keep your windows closed, that wind does not come in and bring any things that may, do some damage or bring something that you don't want in your house. But when you open that window, everything rushes in and then you
Mhm.
close it and it stops. So every time they go up into space, they open a window and it closes after they go out. And then when they come back in, that window opens and it closes, again. And that routine of doing that too frequently, in my opinion, damages uh, the ozone level, it damages the atmosphere. It has its place in the global warming to some degree. So I'm not happy that they're sending this spaceships up there as frequently as they are. And, you know, man continues to be the most brilliant but deadliest creature on this planet as it relates to mankind and humanity because we come up with inventions and it comes at a cost, but then, we do things that cause irreparable damage to us that some people are very concerned about. Some people just want to sweep it under the rug. So we have to be more concentrated and concerned about the care of Mother Nature, uh, the animals, the water, the plants, everything that is on this planet for our survival. And the more we look at progress in doing things, the less we are taking care of this planet. And as you have seen with the weather out in California recently, from it being on fire, with the fires just burning it up, to now you saw 7 to 9 feet of snow come in, and now you're looking at all this flooding going on. This is part of what happens when we don't take care of our planet, or we abuse it in some ways that is not necessary. And a lot of this is basically driven because people want to have more monetary resources. It's all driven by money. And sometimes money is not as important, as they say. Which one would you rather have, a lot of money or a lot of good health? And I'm going to take a lot of good health any day of the week, because you can have all the money you want. It might not be able to save your life or keep you healthy, because they're spending so much money a day to keep you healthy. So that's my little 2 cents.
Okay, well, I agree with your 2 cents. I really do. I was just looking at it from the point of now this that the phase has opened up for jobs. Before, when you were talked to a child about becoming an astronaut or anything in engineering, they really didn't see a need for it. But now, with the opportunities that are happening, I'm seeing more people, that are now seated at the table of color, participating into different areas of engineering, robotics, and things like that. So, this is where I was coming from, but I do
Mm-hmm.
agree with how it can impact our ozone layer, and it goes back to what the former president Obama was saying about our national parks, that we have to take care of nature so that nature can take care of us.
And that's going to always be the case, that we must take care of nature. When you hear about certain animals becoming extinct or are no longer here because man has impeded its progress in their habitats, or put out chemicals and things that have caused them to become sick, ill, and die off. When you hear about animals in the ocean, once upon a time there were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, thousands of them. And when they tell you that, well, it's only a couple of hundred of them existing on the planet when there used to be thousands of them. This is all because of man's intrusion in our natural habitats, waterways, and wherever we put a footprint, wherever man puts a footprint, it's an indelible footprint that can cause irreparable damage to the natural habitats of plants and animals on land and in the sea. And when you see that happen, when you see an oil spill, when you see a fire, when you see anything that chemically induced or mechanically induced that comes from man, that as much as we share in the progress of things that have been made, there's a cost. And sometimes the price is heftier than you'll ever know. And it's not until years later that you find out about it, and you wish someone had not done some of the things they've done. You talk about global warming in today's time, where you're talking about ice caps, and the ice around the North Pole and up around the Arctic area is melting at alarming rates. So when that ice melts, how you have a glass of water and you drop some ice cubes in, and the water rises up. Well, that's what happens when those ice breakers, those ice platforms melt and go into the ocean. It raises the level of the water up. And for states like Florida, everything along the East Coast, West Coast, Gulf Coast, I think New York found out about how critical that will be. It makes some serious damage and makes you think. So that's something that I'm very in tune with.
Okay, well, I understand. Before we leave, I want to recognize Dr. Kamika Corbett. Sorry for messing your name up. She is an immunologist and research fellow at the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease, NIAID. AID. She played a key role in developing the COVID-19 vaccine and was named one of the Times Magazine's 100 most influential people in 2021. So wanted to close with that.
Well, we're thankful to have you bring us all of these women of STEM today. We're thankful that they have made their impact known. We're thankful that they got involved with their disciplines at a level to take them to the highest level and move themselves as far as they could and continue to move for those who are still living and the ones that are on the rise. Continue to do you. You know, if you're blessed where you are smart to do certain things in the area of STEM, do you. Don't worry about what other people are thinking because there's a reason why you were blessed with certain talents from the standpoint of knowledge and wisdom. So do you, and we're thankful for all these women, and we are certainly thankful for that one woman who makes this show possible. So again, we thank you for tuning in to the Kitchings Table here on WBIS LP, WBIS and 106.9 FM. Check us out on Roku, GPAC 23, Facebook Live, and YouTube. That's going to do it for us today here on the Kitchings Table. We hope you've enjoyed the show. For Ronline, Cannady, I'm Earl Kitchings. Until next Tuesday morning when we bring you more of the Kitchings Table, as always, do something good for somebody else. Take care.